This information. Eddie Houchin goes to church with me. Known each other. His wife taught our kids over at Trinity Academy. 20 plus years in the nursing home administration business. He was sharing with me this morning. I'm going to let him share the story about how someone in our church, their parents were having an issue with the nursing home and how he dealt with it. So, Eddie, give us a little bit of background on yourself, and really what kind of the state of the nursing home industry is.
Well, it's when you say nursing home, it's just a placeholder for long-term care. People say nursing home when they really mean assisted living. They say nursing home when they mean home care. Really, what they're saying is, I don't know what to do with mama. You know. We're hanging on by a thread, and we're calling you, and with tears in their eyes. They don't know what to do, and so they'll use the term nursing home, and they don't even know what it is that they're asking for. I had someone call me this morning. The assisted living facility that her mother is in had called the police. And she was going to have to go get her mom out of jail for assault. So that was part of what you run into in assisted living and nursing homes. And it can be, depending on the personnel, the caregivers can be just as bad or wonderful in home care. You've got to have the right people sitting on the bus taking care of them.
So that's a dementia situation as opposed to a criminal situation.
Yes, I have gotten folks out of Butner that the only thing that they were suffering from was they couldn't remember what they had had for lunch or the name of their kids, and couldn't find their driver's license, and so they were taken to Butner. That's sad. That is very sad. But it happens.
What is Butner?
State mental.
Oh, state mental.
Yes, yes. So Steve and I were talking, and he said, you know, with your hands-on in the trenches experience and the numbers, the financial numbers that I saw associated with that long-term care, and some of the facts. There's a lot of facts. You know, people just say we just don't throw up our hands. We don't know. Yeah, we do know. We know that Alzheimer's is about a 14-year disease from start to finish. It's 14 years if they have good caregivers. It's the average, according to the folks the good doctors over at Duke, is about 7 is the average, because they burn the house down. They get in the car, drive away to wherever, and they're not well cared for. So 7's the average. The length of the disease from, I can't remember what I had for lunch and what's your name again, to curled up in a fetal position, unable to drink or eat, is 14 years. So, and if it's not Alzheimer's, and it is one of the other 146 other types of dementia, then it's somewhere in that 14 years. It could be stable. They could have a spell, so to speak, as we used to say, and level off for the rest of their life, and be perfectly fine maintaining with a little help. But it's an individual thing. It depends on who's around them, what kind of family support that they have. Mr. over here in the black hat.
Yes.
You're an advocate for home care.
Correct.
You've experienced good home care, correct?
My wife provided it.
Okay, all right, yeah. That's certainly a possibility, but not always, and neither is nursing home or assisted living. In my experience, in the decades that I was with assisted living, I found that most were not in the personal care business. In fact, I found one of all the ones that I worked either for, which were 2, or with 2 out of dozens and dozens were in the personal care business. The rest were in the real estate development business. And that was because North Carolina has created a monopoly in North Carolina for that piece of real estate that is 2.5 feet by 6 feet called a bed. They only allow so many beds in a county for long-term care, either nursing home or assisted living, and so they've created a monopoly.
In North Carolina, what percentage of the beds are filled by Medicaid patients?
I do not know.
Okay.
I worked primarily in the Medicaid part of things. I saw the private pay. They are both in the real estate development business. Because what they want to do is fill up a building and sell it to another group of investors, which is fine in any other business, but don't have a facade that you're in the personal care business when you're not. Now that young lady or that young gentleman, that administrator that has been in that building for 24 hours and doesn't see a way to get home in the next 2 or 3 hours, they are in personal care. Most certainly. There are good people in all of these buildings taking care of mom or dad, and they are doing it on a budget that was given to them by an investor that is interested in real estate development. So they're doing the best that they can.
And that's the point why I said when I'm advising clients, I'm more an advocate of home care than I am facility care. Because the bottom line is if you're not happy with and I dealt with a mother on Medicaid because my parents were divorced in a nursing home. And if you ask me today how my mother died, I will tell you it was death by nursing home. I also watched my wife take care of her mother with Alzheimer's in our home for 6 years, okay? That was a personal experience, but I've dealt with dozens of clients. My father's just gone on, we just triggered his long-term care policy in February and is receiving home care. And what I'm about to tell you why I'm an advocate for home care has already occurred once. His first home caregiver coming in 3 times a week was phenomenal. She literally physically moved. She's still at the same company, but she's not servicing Cumberland County anymore. The second person coming in was horrible, okay? My thing about why home care is better than facility care is in a facility care situation, if you have a caregiver that is not up to snuff, you can't do anything about it. I mean, your complaints fall on deaf ears for the most part. You do have, again, some good administrators, but in my experience, but in home care where it's one-on-one care, you're the umpire. You're out of here. And that's exactly what we did with my dad's second caregiver. So he's now on number 3, and they do have other people rotate out in and out as that person does. But the primary person coming in, the first one was great, the second one was horrid, the third one's pretty good,
Yeah. So, and you mentioned that there's a monopoly. Is that why there's very little negotiation on the price of these places?
That's correct. Now, something that I discovered 2 years ago, and it's in the fine print, it's in the statute that was put in 1996 in the licensure for adult care homes, that a facility, a community, can be registered, not licensed. And in the last 5 to 6 years, and you can find them all over the place. Capital City, something over on Ray Road.
Oh yeah,
Here
retirement
on-
community.
Yes, and there's
Capital
one
Oaks.
on Lead Mine. You walk in and you look at the wall, there's no license. There's nothing that indicates that they're associated with the state whatsoever. They are registered with the state, similar to, I'm sure most of you have a business license on your front door that the city or your township or whatever may have sold to you for $35. It's not unlike that. It's a 2-page application. They pay the state $135 or something like that. They are registered with the state. They're not licensed by the state. all the regulations have gone out the window,
Are
and
these not independent living?
and it is
facilities?
called independent living.
So
Yes.
that's just like having your own apartment somewhere.
That is absolutely correct. And then you order your care a la carte, either from an agency which is within the building, which cannot be part of that facility, or you can go get, just like you were doing, go get your own, and they come to sit with mama at night or
Right.
when you want them to. It's simply an apartment where, and this is one of the most important things that, what was her name? I'll think of it in a minute. She's been with the Alzheimer's Association here in Raleigh, and I worship the ground that she walks on. She is
Alice?
Alice Watkins. Thank you very much. She helped me with my mom. My mom had Alzheimer's, and I was one of those with tears in my eyes and didn't know what to do. She
And
pulled
you're in
up.
the business?
No, that was before I was in the business.
Okay.
Went to a meeting, wasn't gonna go. It was, I figured it'd be a bunch of women sitting around holding hands, singing Kumbaya, and, crying on each other's shoulders.
They do that too.
Yeah. She pulled, Alice gave facts, statistics, and you left there with a plan which your customers need financially. And when I told her at the end of the meeting, I said, Alice, I gotta buy you lunch. I need some more information. I gotta work with my brother on this. She pulled up a chair. It was 11 o'clock at night. The meeting was over. She said, how about right now? And we sat there, and in 15 minutes, she gave me more information. She wrote me a permission slip to deal with my mom the way that she needed the most help. Never mind the state, never mind my brother, never mind anybody else. Your mom is your responsibility. Take it and run with it. That's why I love that lady so much. But one of their tenets is the caregiver. If you're relying on someone the same or about the same age, like a husband or an aunt or somebody like that, the vast majority of the time, well over 50%, the caregiver will die first. Then what do you do? So you gotta have a plan B if you're relying on that type of caregiver. And you wanna do that to that caregiver who is otherwise very, very healthy.
Wow. So that's a little bit of an advocation for the at-home care. Can really just get out of hand sometime because the caregiver can't necessarily stay up too many days or
Respite
weeks
care is what you're
or
talking about.
months or
Respite care
decades.
is mandatory to have family member
Well,
care.
you
the
cannot say,
caregiver will sometimes die
Yeah.
first because of the stress.
I hate to
And
interrupt,
that's
but
unfortunate.
in any situation, you cannot say and cast in stone, nor even during the situation, home care is the best.
Yeah.
Assisted living is the best. Nursing is the best because it's gonna change and your clients have to be ready for the change with money in their pocket.
Exactly.
If you don't have, for example, 24/7 care at the going rate of what is provided today, if you pick up the phone and call one of these agencies, is $14,000 to $16,000 per month.
Right.
I was just quoted $9,000 for one of my clients who owns a home care.
So it
Or
really
it might
depends
be
on
that
what you're
too
getting.
for a CNA,
Yeah.
but if you need somebody
I
with
guess maybe
dementia
skilled nursing,
training
yeah.
and some additional, it's more expensive than a facility.
Yeah, and that's 24/7 care for somebody with Alzheimer's. In a
You're
very,
better
very
in a
nice licensed facility, it's $7,000 to $8,000.
Right.
In a registered facility, it's about 2/3 of that, somewhere in the neighborhood of $400 to $5,500. And then you're picking the care, which is what you want to do.
Right.
And they are providing the shell that your loved one is staying in, which is crucial according to Alice Watkins, because in picking a community for my mom,
Mhm.
and I was not in the business at this point. Oh, I wanted her to have that 3-bedroom place at Brighton Gardens, you know, and she could afford it. And Alice said, you want her world to get absolutely as small as possible. And unknowingly, what she had done on her own, at home, by herself, she had reduced her living space to a kitchen and an adjoining sitting room where she had put her bed. She didn't go into the rest of the house because it was confusing to her.
Right.
She ate dehydrated food because she would open the refrigerator. She didn't know how long the mayonnaise had been sitting there. So Alzheimer's folks are not stupid, and they will compensate, and they will go a long time before you even know they have Alzheimer's.
Right.
But the point is to get their world as small and as routine as possible. Many of you have seen the movie Groundhog Day
Yeah.
with Bill Murray.
Yeah.
It's really funny. That's the way somebody with Alzheimer's needs their world to be. Every day is exactly the same so they can anticipate what is going to happen and to be as small as possible. What we would see as claustrophobic and confining,
Mhm.
they see as a warm blanket around them.
Yeah, when couching
Security.
the conversation for agents broaching it with their clients, where they're talking about themselves or their parents and everything, I wrote an article for NAFA's national magazine, how to broach the most difficult topic, with your clients. And in interviewing a national expert, I loved what she said. She said that what long-term care insurance does is it gives the kids permission to not worry about the finances, to not worry about the care. Let the professionals in a home care environment or facility provide the care, and then the kids are free to do what they're supposed to do, and that's love mom or love dad, and not have to worry about either the two other big things, finances or the level of care.
She is exactly right.
Right.
And it depends on, when I have recommended someone find some type of community, it's because there were no kids involved. There was no younger support to bear the burden. Might be a husband and wife situation and kids, they never even had any, or they were in another part of the country or didn't care, or whatever the situation might be. And it might have just been a husband trying to figure out what to do with his wife. And my advice to him was, your job is to love her, love on her, and to hold her hand, and to be there when she needs you. Not to be changing her diaper at 85 years old. That's not your job. Your job is to love on her. Get somebody else to change her diaper. And you get a break by getting home, going to bed at night. You get a good night's sleep, and you can come back here at 6 o'clock tomorrow morning and have breakfast with her. A breakfast that someone else is fixed for her, and they'll give you a plate too.
So let me see if I've got it. So trying to wrap things and keep it condensed, if we get down in the weeds too far with this.
Right.
we'll be
I
here
want to
all
speak
week.
to, and I was about to quit so that you guys could ask me. Now, I know what I know, but how does it relate to what you guys need?
And that's where I wanted to get was, we've got a resource here with a lot of experience, and it sounds like each case is gonna be individual. Because
Very much so.
you're gonna see a unique situation. You're gonna have multiple things. It's how are you gonna care for them? How are you gonna pay for it, which we'll deal with the long-term care piece. And really, how do you have that conversation with mom or dad? And so real quickly, if you could give us one just 3 or 4 minute how they would engage working with you, and what information you would need to be able to help them.
I think the lay of the land, it starts with who are your resources, and I don't want to use that word.
That works.
Who by name, Billy Bob, Susan, who is available to help with mom. And if that list is pretty short, when they start talking about, well, it's just me, you know, or they've got an army of people, then of course they're much better off and they have more options. Who are they and what are they like? Had a neighbor across the street, I will never forget. It was he and his sister. That was the army he had. That was the resources he had. His sister was so uptight about the fact that dad could not remember her name. She couldn't get past or into the rest of the day. And it doesn't matter. He still knew that she belonged to him in some regard. Might be his mom one day and his daughter the next and aunt, and, you know, but it didn't matter. It was a loved one. She would get all uptight about that. My neighbor, Jim, is the most laid-back guy in the entire world. My first advice, and you asked the question, the first thing I do, find out who the resources and what are they like. Dad was living with the sister down in Charlotte. I said, Jim, I hope you don't mind me being blunt, but we've got an urgent matter here. You need to get your dad up to Raleigh, because your sister is gonna go nuts trying to take care of him and drive him nuts, what little is left. So get him up here with you and she was an accountant. Let her take care of the finances. And they've got the most beautiful relationship now that you have ever seen. The three of them, dad and the two siblings, enjoy his days as much as they did 20 years ago.
I
They
would
spend days
emphasize on that point that flexibility is absolutely key. My wife and I were living in my dream home on Lake Murray. We made the decision so that we could be closer to the rest of her family. My wife is one of 6. She agreed to be the primary caregiver. Our home on Lake was not the optimal house for caregiving. So we went house shopping with the idea of buying a home to take care of mom. We moved to where we were close by all the other family members and, modify the home. I'm still in that home today. I'd like to be back on Lake Bluntly, okay? But at the end of the day, the family that was local, we got one respite Friday off for a day a month. And, I love the family. I'm now advising them as their mom is in early stages of Alzheimer's and everything, okay? The sister that we thought would help with the caregiving and everything, she just was not, it just wasn't her DNA, okay? For it. I'm not faulting at all. But, we made radical lifestyle changes with the expectation that this would be, something to help. The sister lived in New Jersey and the sister in Idaho came once a year and gave us a full week, sometimes 2 weeks of respite. It took the two of them to do combined what it took my wife by herself with my sons and my help, at times there. But, when you're talking about the army of people helping, we thought we had that. We do.
It might be an army of one.
Yeah.
So in a nutshell, you can become the quarterback for the whole process. And
Correct.
it may be something that is a difficult conversation to have. And if it's gonna be difficult, sometimes it's better to bring in an outside source to come in and facilitate it, so that, if you're telling somebody they gotta move, that may not be advice that they want to hear, but they need to hear. Having an outside person come in and do that.
Well, and you all are, I would assume, or used to, at least I am, talking in black and white. He made a tough decision. And everything boils down to economics. And your clients, they're going to be to the point where they understand that. Had he not moved, then the alternative was this, and the cost was this much. Or we can do this, and the cost is that. Then the family will fall in line and come to grips with, well, what can we afford? What do we want to do? What can we give up? I'm not doing that. Okay, if you're not doing that, then the cost is going to be this.
Can I ask just kind of I used to participate in a senior care group here for a lot of times, and 4 years ago, they were raising the alarm bells in North Carolina that we did not have enough assisted living and home care beds, period, anyway, for what was coming forth. With the new budget proposals that are on the table right now, that are projecting to do huge cuts to Medicaid, which is a huge number of people sitting in these assisted living homes, what's your possible projection going forward, what we're about to hit for a huge wall?
I believe that the unlicensed facilities will be the out-of-home care.
Filling the gap.
And I believe that in-home care will increase as families are either forced to or want to provide that care for mom at home. And that's when, of course, your all's products for the long-term care insurance come into play.
That's a real good segue into our next person, which is gonna talk about, Michael, if you wanna, come on in, I'm gonna introduce you in just a second. We're gonna talk about how you fund stuff, but that's where, using the, reverse mortgage can be a piece. They can stay in their house and do that. The different products that Michael's gonna talk about for, dealing with long-term care, whether it's, indemnity policy or it's a reimbursement policy, that's gonna be important. How they're able to, depending upon how the triggers impact them, it may dictate that you've got to have help or you don't. I mean, I could see memory care as being either a huge hurdle or a minimal hurdle. So
Ideally, at home, spare bedroom, keep mom's world very, very small, and she's not having to go with you to soccer practice. You got 3 kids and there's soccer and swimming and church and, no, mom's not going to enjoy going to soccer practice as much as we would like to think she would. It's going to be confusing to her, so she needs her little haven, and if that can be afforded at home then that's the ideal.
So Eddie's gonna be available. If you've got questions, reach out to me, I'll get you connected. One last question.
You mentioned registered versus licensed.
Yes, sir.
What's the difference?
Huge.
What is
It is the best
pros
kept
and
secret
cons?
in North Carolina. Doug Barrett, and what's his name, Scott, they do licensing in North Carolina. And I learned with my mom, and she ended up living in one of my facilities, because halfway through the disease, I got into this business, and she lived 15 feet from my office door. You can't ask for a better, more ideal situation. She would come out, the CNAs would get her dressed, get her cleaned up. She would walk down to my office, sit in a chair, and look at me for 8 hours and watch me take phone calls and work, and that's all she had ever lived for. That's all she wanted to do, was watch her baby boy work. And with my father-in-law, we learned about the best community, often, if you have to go outside the home, is the one that's closest to you, because you can drop in 5 times a week for 20 minutes instead of coming every other Sunday and staying 3 hours and wearing them out. And the staff doesn't know when you're coming. I used to call and say, I'm gonna pick up mom in about 20 minutes and take her to for ice cream. Can you make sure she's ready to go? Sure. I never went. She was ready to go. She was cleaned up, and she had, the closest place is often the best place. We had my wife's father at an independent living, and that's when I discovered the unregistered facility. I couldn't find the license, and it was the best place in the world. Independence Village up near Old Raleigh. And I'm not recommending them, because you still have to do the work of finding the staff to take care of it. They're just providing the building.
They have in-house staff.
They do. They do, and I found them to be some of their staff to be very good, and like, what's your name?
Doug,
Doug, like Doug, I said, I don't want her taking care of Joe, I want her.
You have a little more control. So,
Yeah.
Okay,
with
let
that,
me
let's,
just say one thing.
Go ahead.
It could be a big issue. If you got a veteran or a widow of a veteran, they will not pay benefits to an independent living facility. It has to be assisted living or nursing home.
It
They don't
dep-
know that generally.
It depends on the paperwork that the independent or unregistered facility has done. If they've gone the, gone the last step and filled out all the applications that the VA requires, they can get reimbursed.
But they have to be contracted with a third party to provide medical services,
Yes,
which
Yeah,
most
so
of them
the
Yeah.
payment
It-
is gonna go
go
to
down based on, so the
it
entire
goes to the
amount
home
is not
health
paid.
the
agency
home health
that
agency,
is,
not to the
that is
facility.
within the building or that you
Facility's not
contract with,
licensed to get it.
not the building.
I've got
Yeah.
a news article on that point. I just pointed to one sentence in the news article. When they were having the VA scandals a few years ago, they said 90%